Have you ever noticed how easy it is to blame the world when life doesn't go as you had hoped? We point to our circumstances, to other people, to timing, anything but ourselves. But here is the uncomfortable truth. Nothing changes until you do. The Stoics believed that freedom comes not from controlling the world outside, but from mastering the world within. What if, instead of waiting for life to fix itself, you decided today to take radical ownership of every choice, every action, every moment? How different would your life look a year from now if you simply stopped handing away your power? If you are done drifting, it is time to take the wheel. Subscribe, not just to this channel, but to your own discipline, your own clarity, your own growth. Every step toward mastery is a step toward becoming who you were meant to be. And that journey starts now. People love to believe that success belongs only to the gifted. It's a comforting thought, isn't it? To imagine that some were simply born with a special spark the rest of us can't find, as if their lives were written in the stars while ours were left to wander in the dust. But if you look closer, that belief is nothing more than an illusion, a story we tell ourselves to excuse our own lack of effort. The Stoics would remind us that talent is far less powerful than discipline, and discipline is available to everyone. A seed, no matter how rare, will never grow if it isn't planted and watered. The same is true for you. The potential you admire in others is not magic. It is effort stacked on effort, day after day, often in the silence when no one is watching. What makes this illusion so dangerous is how easily it becomes a cage. When we convince ourselves that talent is destiny, we quietly surrender before the battle even begins. Think of how many times you've looked at someone's success and said, "They're just lucky," or "They're just gifted." That thought feels safe, because if success is only about natural ability, then you don't have to hold yourself accountable for the work you haven't done. You don't have to ask why you've avoided the discomfort of discipline. But every time you choose that excuse, you trade the possibility of growth for the comfort of surrender. And the truth is, comfort has never created greatness. Seneca once said, "Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity." He meant that those who seem lucky are usually the ones who prepared, often for years, while the rest of the world looked away. Carl Jung believed that each of us carries more within us than we often allow ourselves to see. He wrote, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart." If you are waiting for proof of your capability before you act, you will wait forever. Clarity does not come first. Action does. Once you begin, once you face the grind and embrace the discipline, your vision sharpens. The illusion of talent fades, and you begin to see that what you thought was unreachable was simply neglected inside you, waiting to be cultivated. Every person you admire began as someone uncertain, flawed, and ordinary. The difference is, they refused to stop. Think of the craftsmen who built cathedrals that took generations to complete. Most never saw the final masterpiece. They laid one stone upon another, trusting that the act of building was worth more than the recognition. That is what discipline looks like in practice. You don't measure your worth by how gifted you are on day one. You measure it by how many times you return to the work, even when no one claps, even when the results come slowly. As Epictetus taught, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Freedom isn't found in waiting for a talent you may never possess. It is found in mastering the choices you make each day. So ask yourself, is it really true that you lack talent? Or is it that you have refused to nurture what you have been given? Every time you dismiss yourself with the thought that you aren't naturally gifted, you are watering the weeds of doubt while starving the seeds of your potential. There is no person alive who does not carry something worth cultivating. The difference is in who chooses to nurture it with action. If you rise early to practice your craft, if you persist through boredom and failure, if you refuse to quit when the results don't show, what looks like talent will begin to grow. Others may call it natural, but you will know the truth. It was built, not born. The illusion of talent will keep you small if you let it. But look deeper, and you will see that those who rise are rarely the most gifted. They are the most disciplined, the most consistent, the ones willing to pay the price of effort every single day. The world will always celebrate the outcome and call it talent. But you will know, if you choose the harder path, that it was forged through discipline, sharpened by resilience, and sustained by a simple decision: not to stop. It is easy to speak of accountability when life feels calm. In theory, the word itself sounds strong, noble, even inspiring. But when the alarm rings before dawn, when the day's tasks stretch endlessly before you, when no one is there to watch or applaud, that is when the true weight of accountability reveals itself. In those quiet moments, the shine of the word fades, and what remains is the raw question of whether you will follow through on the promises you whispered to yourself in easier times. True accountability is not glamorous. It is the grind of showing up when it would be simpler not to. The discipline of carrying the load no one else can carry for you. This heaviness is why so many people talk about accountability, but never truly practice it. It feels uncomfortable because it strips away all excuses. You can no longer say, "I didn't have time," when the mirror asks you plainly, "Did you do what you said you would do?" Marcus Aurelius captured this with sharp simplicity. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. In the same way, waste no more time debating what accountability should look like. Either you act or you do not. And yet, this weight is not meant to crush you. It is meant to strengthen you. Think of lifting heavy stones. At first, the strain feels unbearable, but over time, the very act of carrying builds the muscle that makes the next stone feel lighter. Accountability works in the same way. Every small act of follow-through builds a deeper trust in yourself. You begin to realize that your word has weight, and that realization is quietly life-changing. Because once you know you can depend on yourself, you stop waiting for permission from others. Accountability demands more than action. It demands honesty. It means acknowledging where you fell short, without disguise, and choosing to try again. Seneca warned that most men are not free because they live for the opinion of others. Accountability frees you from that trap. It forces you to care less about applause and more about integrity. As Carl Jung wrote, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." Accountability is the act of looking inside with unflinching eyes. This awakening can feel painful, for it removes the comforting illusion that circumstances are the reason for your stagnation. But in that same moment, it gives you back your power. If you are responsible, then you also have the power to change. The heaviness of accountability is also tied to its loneliness. When you stand accountable, you often stand alone. Others may not understand the quiet sacrifices, the hours spent in practice. But that solitude is not weakness. It is the ground where character is formed. Socrates said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." Accountability is examination in action. Over time, it transforms from a weight into freedom. At first, it feels like chains binding you to commitments. But slowly, you realize those chains are forged from your own discipline, and they hold together the very structure of your life. So when accountability feels heavy, remember that the heaviness is the point. You cannot grow strong without resistance. Accountability exists for the days when motivation is gone, when fatigue sets in, when no one else will notice if you fail. Those are the moments that define you. not because others are watching, but because you are. Imagine sitting across from someone you deeply admire, a mentor whose opinion carries weight because they live a life you respect. Now, imagine laying out your entire week before them, hour by hour, choice by choice. No filters, no excuses. Just the raw truth of how you spent your time. Would you hold your head high, confident that your actions matched your ambitions? Or would you feel the sting of shame, shrinking under the quiet realization of how much of your life was given away to distraction? This is the mirror test. It is not about judgment from others, but about whether you can look at yourself without flinching. Time is the currency of life, yet it is the one resource we spend most carelessly. As Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." The mirror test forces you to ask whether you have been a faithful steward of your time. Every hour you waste is not just time lost, it is life lost, and it never returns. True accountability begins with the recognition that your time is your life, and how you spend it reveals what you truly value. The unsettling part of this test is that it does not let you hide behind your words. It only reflects what you actually did. If you said you wanted to be healthier but spent your evening scrolling, the mirror will not lie. Carl Jung observed, "You are what you do, not what you say you'll do." That line cuts through all illusions. The mirror test is where your actions either align with your vision or expose the gap between who you claim to be and who you truly are. And yet, the mirror is not there to condemn you. It is there to awaken you. To see wasted hours is not to see that you are broken. It is to be shown where you can improve. It is a reminder that every day is a fresh chance to redirect your energy. This practice requires courage. Most people avoid it, keeping themselves endlessly distracted because silence brings uncomfortable truths. But it is in that silence that you find your direction. You begin to ask, if I had to justify this moment, would I feel proud or embarrassed? That simple shift can transform how you live. The mirror is always there, silent but unrelenting. It strips away illusion, but it gives you clarity. And with clarity comes the strength to align who you are with who you want to be. Excuses are some of the most convincing lies we tell ourselves, for they wear the mask of reason. I don't have time. I don't have support. On the surface, these statements sound rational, but when you strip them down, they are all the same. An attempt to escape the weight of responsibility. Excuses may protect our comfort in the short term, but they quietly steal the life we could have lived. They are seductive because they shift the blame away from us. Every time you say, "I can't," because you hand over control of your life to something outside yourself. Little by little, you stop believing you have the power to shape your future. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Excuses deny that truth. What makes excuses so dangerous is that they become part of your identity. The more you repeat them, the more you believe them. You convince yourself that you are too busy, too unsupported, and you stop questioning if it's true. This is the subtle prison of excuses. You build the bars, you lock the door, and then you complain about being trapped. The truth is, everyone has obstacles. What separates those who grow from those who remain stuck is not the absence of obstacles, but the refusal to be defined by them. If you are waiting for conditions to be perfect before you act, you will never begin. There is no perfect moment. There is only now. Think of the hours you have lost to excuses. How many dreams have you delayed because the timing wasn't right? Each excuse feels harmless in the moment, but over time, they pile up into regret. The mirror of your life does not reflect what you wanted to do. It reflects what you did. The challenge is to see excuses for what they are. Thieves of your time, your energy, and your potential. Once you name them, they lose their power. They stop sounding like logic and start to sound like avoidance. And in that moment, you reclaim the ability to choose differently. The path of action is uncomfortable, but discomfort is not your enemy. It is your teacher. When you stop listening to excuses, you begin to see obstacles not as reasons to quit, but as opportunities to rise. And slowly, the very weight that once held you back becomes the resistance that builds your strength. They steal from you the life you might have lived, the potential you could have realized, the future you were meant to build. But the moment you decide to stop believing them, that is the moment you reclaim your power. There is a subtle yet crucial difference that people often forget, a distinction that can determine whether you move forward or remain trapped in place. It is the difference between shame and disappointment. Shame whispers that you are fundamentally broken, that something is wrong with you at your very core, that you will never be enough. Disappointment, on the other hand, simply states that you fell short this time. Shame is a dead weight, a paralyzing force that anchors you to the past. Disappointment, though uncomfortable, can be the very spark that ignites growth. And yet, most of us confuse the two. We punish ourselves when we should be learning. We drown in self-pity when we should be adjusting our course. The Stoics would remind us that our mistakes are not proof of our worthlessness, but opportunities to refine our character. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." Shame takes a mistake and interprets it as proof of your inadequacy. Disappointment takes that same mistake and sees it as a lesson. The event itself does not change. It is your judgment of it that determines whether you will crumble or grow stronger. Think of a child learning to walk. They fall, they stumble, they cry, but no one shames them for it. The fall is never seen as proof that the child is broken. It is seen as proof that they are learning. And because they are not crushed by shame, they get up and try again. In time, they walk, then run, then explore the world. Now, consider how harshly we treat ourselves as adults. One failure, one missed opportunity, one rejection, and we collapse into shame, convinced that the fall means we are unworthy. But what if we looked at ourselves with the same patience we offer a child? What if we allowed disappointment to be the guide that pushes us forward, instead of letting shame chain us to the ground? Carl Jung once wrote, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become." Shame keeps you imprisoned by what happened. Disappointment opens the door to what can still be. This distinction is vital. If you confuse shame with accountability, you will only punish yourself instead of growing. The Stoic way is not self-condemnation, but self-examination. You do not deny your errors, but you refuse to make them your identity. You look at them clearly, ask what they reveal, and then decide what to do differently. Disappointment, in this light, is a form of hope. To be disappointed means you still care, that you still hold a vision for something better. Shame robs you of that vision, convincing you that the outcome will always be the same, and so you stop trying. As Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Shame locks your reaction in despair. Disappointment, when met with courage, sharpens your response and prepares you to act more wisely. Of course, disappointment is still painful. To fall short of your own expectations stings deeply. But the Stoics embraced this sting as useful. Pain is information. It shows you where to focus, what to improve, what needs to change. Shame numbs you, telling you not to try because you are doomed to fail. Disappointment keeps you awake, reminding you that you are capable of more. It keeps you restless in the pursuit of your better self. This is why high achievers often live with a quiet sense of disappointment. They hold themselves to high standards and constantly see where they could improve. But instead of letting that awareness curdle into shame, they use it as fuel. It is what pushes an athlete to train harder after a loss, what inspires an artist to refine their craft after a weak performance, what drives a thinker to keep questioning after being proven wrong. In this way, disappointment becomes a tool for resilience. Seneca advised, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." That friction is disappointment. It is the resistance you feel when you face the gap between where you are and where you want to be. Shame tells you that gap can never be crossed. Disappointment tells you the gap exists for a reason, so you can learn how to bridge it. Without friction, without falling short, without that ache of dissatisfaction, there is no refinement. There is only stagnation. So the next time you stumble, pause and ask yourself, am I drowning in shame, or am I sitting with disappointment? If you find yourself telling a story about being broken, unworthy, or incapable, that is shame, and it will keep you trapped. But if you can feel the sting without building an identity around it, you give yourself permission to move forward. Disappointment says, "This is not the end. This is feedback. Adjust and try again." The difference is everything. Shame is a weight that presses you down. Disappointment is a weight that, when carried, makes you stronger. And the choice between the two lies not in the event itself, but in how you decide to see it. Remember this: falling short does not mean you are broken. It means you are human. And if you choose to see clearly, every disappointment can become the stepping stone that leads you closer to the life you were meant to live. Whenever life pushes back against you, the most powerful thing you can do is also the most uncomfortable. You must ask yourself, how is this my fault? At first, those words feel like an attack, as if you are being asked to take responsibility for things that were clearly not your doing. But this question is not a weapon meant to break you. It is a tool designed to uncover where your influence truly lies. It strips away the comfort of blame. It denies you the easy refuge of pointing fingers. And in doing so, it forces you to look inward, to the one place where your power actually resides. Most people prefer to see themselves as victims of circumstance. It is far easier to say, "This happened because of them," or "The system is unfair," than to ask what role we played in the outcome. But the moment you shift your attention from the external to the internal, you reclaim something essential: the ability to change. The Stoics were clear on this distinction. As Epictetus taught, we cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them. Asking, "How is this my fault?" is simply another way of asking, "What part of my response could I have controlled, but didn't?" Think about a mistake at work, a failed relationship, a missed opportunity. It's tempting to explain these away by highlighting what others did wrong. But when you take that route, you learn nothing, because you have placed all the power in someone else's hands. If instead you ask what you could have done differently, you begin to see possibilities. Perhaps you didn't prepare as thoroughly as you could have. Perhaps you avoided a difficult conversation until it was too late. Perhaps you ignored the warning signs because you didn't want to face the discomfort. These realizations sting, but they also illuminate the path forward. Blame only chains you to the past. Responsibility unlocks the door to growth. Carl Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." When you refuse to ask the hard questions, your blind spots run your life. You end up repeating the same mistakes and calling it bad luck. But when you ask, "How is this my fault?" you shine a light into those hidden corners. You begin to see the patterns of avoidance, weakness, or fear that have quietly shaped your choices, and once you see them, you can no longer pretend you are powerless. The illusion of fate fades, and the reality of choice stands before you. The reason this question feels so terrifying is that it removes all excuses. If you can always find some way that your actions contributed to the outcome, then there is no safe place to hide. That is a hard truth, but it is also profoundly liberating. Because if there is no safe place to hide, there is also no cage holding you down. You are not doomed to repeat the same cycles forever. You can adjust. You can learn. You can grow. Of course, this is not about destructive self-blame. You are not meant to berate yourself for everything that goes wrong. Life will always bring storms you did not create. Loss, betrayal, accidents. The point of the question is not to assign guilt where it doesn't belong. It is to discover where your influence could have been greater, where your choices shaped the outcome, and how you might respond differently in the future. It's about responsibility, not punishment. Responsibility is not about what's fair, it's about what's useful. And asking how something is your fault is profoundly useful, because it reveals where you have the power to act next. The greatest leaders, thinkers, and creators all share this ability to ask the hard question. They don't waste years nursing old wounds or pointing fingers. They ask, what part did I play, and how can I play it differently next time? This mindset transforms failure from an enemy into a teacher. It makes setbacks part of the path forward, instead of detours that leave you lost. So when life breaks against you, when you lose the job, when the relationship fails, when the opportunity slips away, pause and ask the hardest question, not to tear yourself apart, but to piece yourself together more wisely. Ask, what was within my control that I ignored? Where could I have acted differently? What choice did I avoid making because it was uncomfortable? The answers are rarely easy, but they are always valuable, because they reveal that even when life feels overwhelming, you are never completely powerless. In the end, the hardest question is also the most freeing. It challenges you to stop seeing yourself as a victim and start seeing yourself as a participant in your own life. And when you accept that role, everything changes. You stop waiting for others to fix things for you. You stop resenting the world for being unfair. You take ownership of your failures and your future. And slowly, the same question that once terrified you becomes the one that strengthens you. How is this my fault? Taking control of your life is never free. It comes with a cost heavier than most people are willing to pay. Responsibility demands a kind of emotional tax, a constant toll collected not in money, but in effort, sacrifice, and honesty. It costs you your comfort, because comfort thrives on avoidance. It costs you your excuses, because excuses dissolve the moment you stand accountable. And it costs you the luxury of pointing fingers, because ownership leaves no room for blame. These costs feel steep, and at times they can feel isolating. But the truth is, what you gain in return is far greater than anything you lose. You gain the ability to trust yourself, and with that trust, you stop drifting as a passenger in your own story. You sit in the driver's seat, fully aware that every choice you make carries weight. That awareness can be unsettling at first. When you accept ownership, you can no longer pretend that the circumstances of your life are random or dictated solely by others. Every decision becomes meaningful. Every action becomes a vote for the person you are becoming. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, it is not external things that trouble us, but our judgments about them. To own your judgments is to accept that the quality of your life is not determined by the storm around you, but by how you choose to navigate it. And once you take that truth seriously, excuses no longer hold the same appeal. You begin to see them for what they really are: escape routes that lead nowhere. But here lies the paradox. The cost of ownership is heavy, and yet, without paying it, you carry a weight that is far heavier. When you refuse ownership, you pay with regret, with doubt, with the quiet sense that you are betraying yourself. The momentary relief of blaming others or retreating into excuses always comes back with interest, in the form of wasted time and lost potential. As Seneca wrote, "While we waste our time hesitating and postponing, life is slipping away." Ownership is costly, but hesitation is ruinous. The choice is not whether you will pay, it is whether you will pay in the currency of discipline now or in the currency of regret later. Carl Jung once observed, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Ownership is the price of that privilege. To become who you are meant to be, you must first accept that no one else can walk your path for you. No one can carry your burdens. No one can make your decisions. No one can choose your habits. That realization can feel overwhelming, but it also brings a profound clarity. The moment you claim everything as yours, your failures, your flaws, your victories, you realize that the life you want is not waiting for someone else to deliver it. It is waiting for you to claim it through deliberate action. The emotional tax of ownership often shows up as loneliness. When you start holding yourself to a higher standard, you may notice that not everyone around you is willing to do the same. Some may mock your discipline. Others may resent your refusal to play the old games of blame and excuses. But ownership requires you to prioritize growth over approval. As Socrates said, "To find yourself, think for yourself." Ownership means daring to think for yourself, even when it leaves you standing apart from the crowd. That separation is part of the cost, but it also becomes a source of your strength. Another part of the cost is that ownership makes you brutally aware of your limitations. When you can no longer push responsibility onto others, you are forced to see clearly where you have fallen short. This can be painful, but it is also freeing, for it is only when you acknowledge your weaknesses that you can begin to strengthen them. Aristotle wrote, "Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom." Ownership is that knowledge in practice. It strips away illusion and forces you to meet yourself honestly. And while honesty can wound, it also heals, because it gives you the firm ground from which to rise. The longer you live with ownership, the more you realize it is less about perfection and more about consistency. You don't take control of your life in one dramatic act. You do it in the small, often invisible choices you make every day. Choosing to finish the task instead of leaving it for later. Choosing to take responsibility for a mistake instead of covering it up. Choosing to improve a little each day rather than waiting for the perfect opportunity. These choices compound, and over time, they transform not just what you do, but who you believe yourself to be. Slowly, you become someone you can trust, someone who does not break their own word, and that self-trust is worth more than comfort, more than excuses, more than blame. The cost of ownership will never disappear. Every day you choose it, you pay in effort, honesty, and discipline, but in return you gain a kind of freedom that cannot be taken from you. You gain clarity in your direction, strength in your actions, and integrity in your character. You stop being the passenger who complains about the journey and become the driver who steers with intention. And once you experience that kind of freedom, you realize the price you paid was not a burden. It was an investment. In the end, the real question is not whether ownership is costly, but whether you are willing to trade your comfort for your potential. The emotional tax is real, but so is the reward. To own your life is to carry weight, yes, but it is also to stand tall under that weight, knowing it is shaping you into someone stronger, clearer, and more alive. And that is a price worth paying. When you truly begin to hold yourself accountable, something subtle but powerful shifts inside you. At first, it's just about your own life, waking up when you said you would, following through on your commitments, taking ownership when things go wrong. But over time, this discipline changes not only how you see yourself, but how you see others. You stop tolerating weakness, not because you want to judge or belittle anyone, but because you understand what it costs to rise. You know the weight of responsibility. You know the pain of pushing past excuses. You know the discipline required to climb out of comfort and into growth. And once you've paid that price, you can no longer look at avoidance or mediocrity in the same way. It isn't judgment, it's recognition. The remarkable thing is that people notice this shift, often without you saying a word. When you hold yourself to a higher standard, others begin to feel it. They see it in your actions, in your consistency, in the quiet way you live what you preach. This is why ownership is contagious. It spreads not through lectures, but through example. This is why becoming the standard matters so much. The world doesn't change because we demand more from others. It changes because we demand more from ourselves. When you raise your own standard, the people around you begin to mirror it. A friend starts rethinking their own excuses because they see you choosing discipline over distraction. A colleague works harder because your consistency quietly raises the bar. Even within your family, your example sets a tone that words alone could never achieve. Leadership, in its truest sense, begins here, not with authority, but with ownership. Of course, becoming the standard carries a cost. People may resist you at first. Some will criticize. Others may pull away. Your integrity threatens those who are not ready to face themselves. But here again, the Stoics offer clarity. Epictetus said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it. If your standard unsettles others, let it. Your role is not to lower yourself for their comfort, but to live in a way that calls them upward. You cannot force anyone to rise, but you can refuse to step down. And in time, the very people who once resisted may begin to admire, or even follow, the path you've chosen." When you take responsibility, when you awaken to your own power, you become more than just another person drifting with the crowd. You become a standard, a measure against which others naturally weigh themselves. And this does not mean perfection. It means honesty, integrity, and a refusal to abandon the responsibilities that make life meaningful. Awakening is not about doing everything flawlessly, but about facing life consciously, without excuses or illusions. The more you embrace this, the more you realize that responsibility is not only personal, it is social. Your actions ripple outward. By living with ownership, you unconsciously give others permission to do the same. When they see you holding yourself accountable, they begin to wonder what might be possible if they did too. In this way, you don't just change your own life. You begin to reshape the culture around you. Seneca once said, "Associate with people who are likely to improve you." When you become the standard, you are that person for others. You are the one whose presence lifts rather than drags down, whose example pushes rather than excuses. And yet, the work never ends. Becoming the standard isn't about reaching a destination where you are beyond failure. It's about staying committed to the path, even when it is difficult, even when it feels lonely. The higher your standard, the more you will see your own shortcomings. But that is part of the process. It keeps you humble, it keeps you honest, and it keeps you moving. As Aristotle wrote, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. Excellence, you see, is not a singular act, but a cultivated habit. Becoming the standard is not a single achievement. It is the quiet rhythm of dedication, practiced day after day, in moments both small and great. This, at its core, is the heart of true ownership. It begins as a silent commitment within, but it refuses to remain contained. It radiates outward, infusing your work, your relationships, and your community with its strength. It subtly reshapes the world around you, inspiring others to see a higher version of themselves, often without them ever knowing why. If you desire a better world, it finds its true beginning not in grand pronouncements, but in you. It begins not with demands or speeches, but with the quiet, unwavering choice to live by a higher code, to hold yourself accountable when no one is watching. In awakening to your own responsibility, you inadvertently awaken those around you. For becoming the standard is not a quest for superiority. It is a journey into deep alignment with your truest self. It is about living so authentically that your actions become your creed, and your very presence becomes an invitation for others to discover their own potential. This kind of ownership may begin with a single person, but once it takes root, it is destined to grow. It spreads, it inspires, and in time, it transforms everything it touches. Ultimately, it all comes down to a single, profound truth. Your life is shaped not by circumstance, but by the responsibility you choose to embrace. The moment you release your excuses and decide to carry your own weight, you reclaim the power that was always yours. This choice is seldom easy, but it is the sole path to genuine freedom, clarity, and unshakable strength. So let this be the moment. Let today be the day you rise to meet your own standard. If these words resonate with you, do not let the feeling fade. Continue the journey. Choose one of the suggested videos on your screen to delve deeper into the path of self-mastery. Thank you for walking this path with us at Stoic Journal.